The beginning of 20th century, we were just 1.6 billion people. Now, 2019, we are 7.6 billion people. Now, they are saying by 2050 we will be 9.6 billion people. Why are we making these predictions? Why don't we have a plan? Why don't we say in the next 50 years we will be 4.5 billion people? Are we willing to address this? This is what needs to be addressed. It may look like there are many problems, but actually there is only one problem. We are nice, but we are just too many. This we need to understand. There is no space for any other creature to live on this planet simply because we are so many and our footprint is so big. So we are trying to reduce the size of our footprint, I understand that. But believe me, it is much easier to control human population than human aspirations. You cannot control human aspirations. You can easily control human population if everybody is focused on that. The nations, the religions of the world, various community leaders, everybody, if they are focused on seeing how to bring down the population of this planet, human population, so that other populations can live. Because we need to understand this planet will perish if all the insects die today, within 4 to 6 years' time. If all the worms die, within 1.5 to 2 years, all life on this planet will perish. If all the microbes die, probably within hours this planet will perish. But if you and me disappear, this planet will flourish.
So in the session we just attended here at the Economic Forum, I think there was a sense of relief, actually, in your frankness. You brought up some issues that others are reluctant to bring up.
Always. All the religious groups are against me because I'm talking about population. They want more souls. I want less on the planet.
And again, I think that the biggest question maybe in economics and politics of the coming decades will be what to do with all these useless people. The problem is more boredom and what to do with them, and how will they find some sense of meaning in life when they are basically meaningless, worthless.
I'd like to share a revelation that I've had during my time here. It came to me when I tried to classify your species. I realized that you're not actually mammals. Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and you multiply, and multiply until every natural resource is consumed. And the only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus. Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You are a plague, and we are the cure.
I think it's a bit of a joke the way people have made this overpopulation thing into a kind of myth. I don't really believe it, you know. I think whatever happens will balance itself out and work itself out. And it's all right for us all living saying, oh, well, there's enough of us, so we won't have any more. Don't let anybody else live. I don't believe in that. I think we've got enough food and money to feed everybody. And I think the natural balance, even though old people will last longer, I'm sure there's enough room for us, and some of them can go to the moon anyway.
You mean you think there's enough if it were
I don't believe overpopulation, you know. I think that's just a kind of myth that the government have thrown out to keep your mind off Vietnam and Ireland and all the important subjects.
Oh, I think you're wrong about that.
Oh, I don't care.
Let's take the entire population of the planet, 7.3 billion people. We do the same math. 7.3 billion divided by 750 times 12 acres converted to square miles, and we have 180,000 square miles. That means we could fit everyone in the world. Every American, Canadian, Australian, Mexican, European, Russian, Muslim, African, Hindu, Chinese, Japanese, Indonesian, and all of South America. In a one-story home with a front yard and a backyard with plenty of parks and playgrounds and waterways for every 750 people, and the entire world population could all fit easily on less than 75% of the available landmass of the state of Texas, and still have 80,000 square miles of Texas to spare. I think we can all agree there are too many people in the world, and we really should limit our reproduction. But too many people is not the reason that half the population of the world has to live in hunger and squalor, and the rest of us lives of desperation and alienation.
The things they told me was that he was at the house one night, and we were talking, and he started laughing. He said, "Aaron, what do you think women's liberation was about?" And I said, I'm pretty conventional thinking about it at that point. I said, I think it's about women having the right to work, getting equal pay with men, just like they won the right to vote, you know? And he started to laugh. He said, "You're an idiot." And I said, "Why am I an idiot?" He said, let me tell you what that was about. We, the Rockefellers, funded that. We funded Women's Lib, you know? And we're the ones who got all over the newspapers and television, the Rockefeller Foundation. He says, "And you want to know why?" He said, "There were two primary reasons. And they were, one reason was we couldn't tax half the population before Women's Lib. And the second reason was, now we get the kids in school at an early age. We can indoctrinate the kids how to think. It breaks up their family. The kids start looking at the state as the family, as the school, as the officials, as their family, not as the parents teaching them." And so those are the two primary reasons for Women's Lib, which I thought up to that point was a noble thing. You know, when I saw their intentions behind it, where they were coming from when they created it, the thought of it, I saw the evil behind what I thought was a noble venture.
In 2013, I began and orchestrated an almost 3-year-long, very in-depth, comprehensive investigative journalism study about the harvesting and trafficking of body parts from late-term abortions. There's multiple violations and multiple issues that you very quickly start to learn about when you look into it. There's the basic problem of selling body parts, where you're basically creating a system, creating transactions, creating business relationships that incentivize the objectification and the destruction of human beings in order to keep the business going. So for about 30 months, we went undercover with the explicit purpose of partnering with some of the biggest Planned Parenthood abortion clinics in the country to send their technicians in, harvest body parts from the abortions that were being done that day, and then package up the parts and ship them off to different customers all around the country, sometimes around the world. In July of 2015, we began to release the Undercover video series. I had been hoping that this was something that would, that would maybe generate 100,000 views or something. Instead, what happened was even bigger than I could have imagined. Within less than a week, we had close to 3 million views on YouTube of the first video, and multiple congressional committees announcing that they were launching federal investigations of Planned Parenthood's involvement in fetal trafficking and fetal experimentation. The truth got out there, and the words of Planned Parenthood's own leadership describing their organization's participation in these activities went viral and was being publicized for the whole world to see.
So, the important thing is, one way or the other, we may get an infection. The important thing is to postpone it as much as we can. So this is why the vaccination drive is very, very important. Vaccination is not an ultimate solution, but vaccination pushes the problem.
think that so much of this is down to misinformation and the way that we receive information now. And one of the things I've been shocked by this past 12 months or 7, 8 months is how easily people believe in conspiracy theories. Like, why do you think we as people are so vulnerable to misinformation?
You know, the truth is painful often, and the truth is complicated. Scientific reality, if you look at the epidemic, for example, to just understand what a virus is, it's such a complicated thing. A virus is not even a living being. It's not an animal. It doesn't eat. It doesn't reproduce by itself. It's really just a piece of biological code, genetic code, that has the amazing ability to infiltrate our body, hijack the mechanism of the cells in our body, and tell the cells, produce more copies of me. And that's how it goes viral. More and more copies of this code going into the nearby cells and nearby people, and you have an epidemic. Now, this is such a strange thing, a complicated thing to understand. It's much easier to believe that, you know, there is some group of billionaires who created this thing in some laboratory in order to take over the world.
The theory of viruses came from a myth. Pasteur came up with this idea of a poison, and the Latin word for poison is virus. Came up with this idea, paid for by the French government, to stop the British from traveling with their ships to ports, that they were getting food and medicine and whatever they were doing, all the trade they were doing well through the Mediterranean. And so once they spread this lie of viruses, that everyone was contagious on board, they were bringing it from India, they shut down the ports to them. So this was actually used as a wartime hoax to scare and manipulate populations to do what they wanted them to do, which was not support their enemy. So now, this is usually how something gets identified, okay, is you find it like under a microscope or in a situation, you go, hey, this is weird, wow, this is amazing. What is this? Let's figure it out. Let's study it for a while. And then after you study for a while, you go, oh, let's identify it and let's call it bacteria. Is that a good name? Yeah, sure, it's a great name. Well, guess how viruses were identified? Well, they were already come into existence by myth, okay, because of this story. And then people assumed they existed because of this myth. And so they said, well, we better find them. So let's look for them. Oh, we can't see them. They must be invisible. Oh, well, until the electron microscope came around, and we could see 100 times smaller than bacterium, which is what they said it was. And guess what? We couldn't see that either.
When he understands that the biggest fraud against this humanity, our humanity, is the fact that viruses have never been isolated. None. There is no measles virus. And once you understand the basic chemistry and biology of the fraud that they've perpetuated on the human race, and each year, if you ever thought about this, why is there a new virus every year? With a new name? With a similar types of symptomologies? This all started with the Third Reich. And Dr. Enders and the so-called viruses. I write about this in one of my books. A second thought about viruses, vaccines, and the HIV/AIDS hypothesis. And I'm not alone. Those who have been brave enough, who stood up, even Peter Duesberg, Professor Peter Duesberg at Berkeley University, a friend of mine, who wrote the book Inventing the AIDS Virus, lost all of his funding at the university. When the Nobel Prize winner for discovering the so-called HIV virus gets exiled to Beijing because he's changing his mind about the existence of a virus. This is how bad things are.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens, because in the coming generations, we will learn how to engineer bodies and brains and minds. Now, how exactly will the future masters of the planet look like? This will be decided by the people who own the data. Now, why is data so important? It's important because we've reached the point when we can hack not just computers, we can hack human beings and other organisms. Now, what do you need in order to hack a human being? You need two things. You need a lot of computing power, and you need a lot of data, especially biometric data. But control of data might enable human elites to do something even more radical than just build digital dictatorships. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because once you can hack something, you can usually also engineer it. All of life, for 4 billion years, dinosaurs, amoebas, tomatoes, humans, all of life was subject to the laws of natural selection and to the laws of organic biochemistry. But this is now about to change. Science is replacing evolution by natural selection with evolution by intelligent design. Not the intelligent design of some god above the clouds, but our intelligent design and the intelligent design of our clouds, the IBM cloud, the Microsoft cloud. These are the new driving forces of evolution. And at the same time, science may enable life, after being confined for 4 billion years to the limited realm of organic compounds, science may enable life to break out into the inorganic realm. Humans are now hackable animals.
The goals of the banking industry, not just the Federal Reserve System, but the private banks in Germany and England, all over Italy, all over the world, they all work together. They're all central banks, and they're all part of the Communist Manifesto. You know, central banking is one of the major planks of the Communist Manifesto. We talk about America being a capitalistic country, but yet at the same time we have a central bank that plans everything for us, right? And the graduated income tax is another plank of the Communist Manifesto, right? So right there you have two major planks of the Communist Manifesto that have been brought in because of the Federal Reserve System, okay? So the ultimate goal that these people have in mind is the goal to create a one-world government run by the banking industry, run by the bankers, and they're doing it in sections. The European currency, the euro, and the European Constitution is one part of it. Now they're trying to do it in America with the North American Union, right? And they want to create a new currency called the Amero, right? And the whole agenda is to create a one-world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. And this is given me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And all money will be in your chips. And so instead of having cash, anytime you have money in your chip, they can take out whatever they want to take out whenever they want to. If they say you owe us this much money in taxes, they just deduct it out of your chip digitally.
Total control.
Total control. And if you're like me or you, and you're protesting what they're doing, they can just turn off your chip. And you have nothing. You can't buy food. You can't do anything. It's total control.
Everything is being monitored. In this time of crisis, you have to follow science. It's often said that you should never allow a good crisis to go to waste, because a crisis is an opportunity to also do good reforms that in normal times people will never agree to,
But in a crisis, you see we have no chance. So let's do it.
Vaccine won't help us go
the
to
vaccine
the test, of course.
will help us, of course. It will make things, more manageable.
Surveillance. People could look back in 100 years and identify the coronavirus epidemic as the moment when a new regime of surveillance took over, especially surveillance under the skin, which I think is maybe the most important development of the 21st century, is this ability to hack human beings, to go under the skin, collect biometric data, analyze it, and understand people better than they understand themselves. This, I believe, is maybe the most important event of the 21st century.
Once you really solve a problem like direct brain-computer interface, when brains and computers can interact directly, for example, to take just one example, that's it. That's the end of history. That's the end of biology as we know it. Nobody has a clue what will happen once you solve this.
Demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C. Your leftists in United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split, and now he's working against Sandinistas. It happened in Grenada when Maurice Bishop was already a Marxist. He was executed by a new Marxist who was more Marxist than this Marxist. Same happened in Afghanistan when first there was Taraki, he was killed by Amin, then Amin was killed by Babrak Karmal with the help of KGB. Same happened in Bangladesh when Mujibur Rahman, very pro-Soviet leftist, was assassinated by his own Marxist-Leninist military comrades. It's the same pattern everywhere.
After millions of years of evolution, suddenly within 200 years, the family and the intimate community break, they collapse. Most of the roles fulfilled by the family and by the intimate community for thousands and tens of thousands of years are transferred very quickly to new networks provided by the state and the market. You don't need children, you can have a pension fund. You don't need somebody to take care of you. You don't need neighbors and sisters or brothers to take care of you when you're sick. The state takes care of you. The state provides you with police, with education, with health, with everything. In terms of ideas, in terms of religions, the most interesting place today in the world, in religious terms, is Silicon Valley. It's not the Middle East. This is where the new religions are being created now by people like Ray Kurzweil, and these are the religions that will take over the world. And if you think about it from the viewpoint of the poor, it looks terrible because throughout history, death was the great equalizer. The big consolation of the poor throughout history was that, okay, these rich people, they have it good, but they're going to die just like me. But think about a world, say in 50 years, 100 years, where the poor people continue to die, but the rich people, in addition to all the other things they also get exemption from death.
First brother rises. It is time we march on stone in the wood.
Do you sleep?
Of course, sire.
Do you dream?
Dream?
Yes.
No, Emperor.
Neither did I, until I began my experiments upon the darkening. Now my slumber is riddled with nightmares. Do you remember what it was like before we were rent asunder?
I don't think of such things.
And yet, the thoughts come.
I remember suffering.
Yes.
Guilt.
Yes.
And sorrow. But it's hard to recall, like
a dream.
A nightmare.
Yes. We know the torment that lies behind us, but what torment waits beyond this existence? All the more reason to hold on to life with all claws. No matter the cost.
It is the man with tradition, with roots, with sacredness, because relation to the earth makes a peasant a sacred person, and proletarian is devoid of the sacredness. So all the communist vision of the desacralized bourgeois exploiting desacralized proletarian is wrong, is totally wrong, and that is satanic vision of communism and the same satanic vision of liberalism. But I think that real exploitation begins when the real desacralization begins. So when you regard the other as the thing, as some material body, when you deny the existence of the soul, that is exploitation. So I think modernity is exploitation in all its kind, and communism isn't exception. So social society is based on exploitation because it is based on the denial of the sacred. And if you have the attitude, purely materialist attitude toward human being, that is already his reification, objectivation, so alienation. So this alienation is the beginning and the foundation of foundation of real exploitation.
Today actually manage to live, many people, as isolated, alienated individuals. In the most advanced societies, many people live as alienated individuals with no community to speak about, with a very small family. It's no longer the big extended family. It's now a very small family, maybe just a spouse, maybe 1 or 2 children, and even they might live in a different city, in a different country, and you see them maybe once in every few months, and that's it. Talking about now is like a second industrial revolution, but the product this time will not be textiles or machines or vehicles or even weapons. The product this time will be humans themselves. We are basically learning to produce bodies and minds. Bodies and minds are going to be, I think, the 2 main products of the next wave of all these changes.
I think where design of the people begins to be regarded as the thing and not as design, not existential presence, thinking existential presence, not as a soul, here exploitation begins. So in traditional order, there was no exploitation because the soul was accepted and affirmed, the existence of soul in all the strata, all the levels of the population. So all the strata.
The time bomb is ticking with every second.
Reality is insane. They want to keep us in chains. Plus they have a web of deception they weave in our brains. But now I see through the games. They're trying to lead us astray. Gatekeeping information, they want to keep it that way. But I'm researching all the time, every day of the week. So people claim that I'm crazy and I'm labeled a freak. But that's what happens when you're awake in a nation of sheep, where they try their best to keep the population asleep. They poison our food and water and they offer us war, but we're not falling for their parlor tricks, not anymore. We walked through the door and let our chains drop to the floor. There's many areas in this life that we got to explore, and the earth too, because they might be hiding more land, more seas, more trees, more snow, more sand. In school, everything that we're taught is a lie. And lately
the Quran actually says, saying, hey, go and have a look. They changed these languages. They changed the books. They changed the history books. Go and look through the cities. These cities are buried and destroyed. Go and check the history. These people are lying. These people who are running the system over there, they've already destroyed all these other people. You be careful because you're next. That's why the Quran is a threat.